Hi, I'm Christopher Stewart. Working on Babylon 5. Babylon 5 was absolutely a joy to work on, but it was a very strange time in my life. At that point in time, Hudson Lick had just broken up with me and gone off to work on Callisto with Hercules Xena. I had dated Marjorie Monaghan, who brought me on board briefly for like one or two scenes in Space Rangers, and reunited me with a couple of old friends there. And she was not quite making up her mind whether or not she wanted to keep dating me or break up with me. Used my contacts to get the contract and then broke up with me. And so I then met and started dating Gina Jamieson. And in amongst all of this, I was working for the federal government. And we were in between a kind of lull zone, in between the war on drugs and what would become Desert Shield. So it was a very strange time. And there was one day where Christian Slater showed up. I was good friends with him. He and I worked together on Tales from the Tales from the Dark Side, I think it was. And he came up at a very interesting time. I had just gotten a videotape in the mail of New Text Video Toaster, and I was watching this. Now, I had an Amiga of my own, and I've always been a fan of 3D animation. I today work occasionally with Poser and create a few interesting 3D animations just for fun. It's one of my hobbies. And back then I was kind of interested in the whole idea of the video toaster and what could be done with it and whatnot. And he was fascinated with it, and he started talking with me a little bit. And then he started talking with his mom, and Mary Jo brought me on board with Babylon 5. And it turns out that she had planned to kind of bring me involved with it to some degree. She had my measurements from when I worked with Roger Corman and from Tales from the Dark Side, and she had made up a rubber suit, and she wanted me to do one of the rubber suit pieces. I did the entire thing pretty much for free, for volunteer work. I didn't care. I was just having fun. It was one of the great moments of happiness in a whole area of really bad times. So, I didn't care. I was just having so much fun, I didn't even think about it twice. And I looked at him and said, well, you've got me. Use me however you want to use me. And I don't care. I'll do whatever you want. And we'll just have fun. And they said, okay. And they filmed me in very small segments, some of which may never have actually been used. Some of it may still be on the cutting room floor. Who knows? I was everywhere throughout the whole series. I was in small segments in like hallways. I was in areas like the loading dock and things of this nature. And I was aliens, I was humans, I was whatever they wanted to put me up as. And then, of course, I did my main sequence with the return of Alex-Hyde White as the president of the Ministry of Peace, which is just absolutely incredible. I love being able to do that. That was so much fun. Because here again I am creating peace, the perfect peace, and you will all be our uniforms. And it's a throwback to Godzilla, and it's just absolutely, I love that piece. And we had so much fun doing that. When we started shooting it, we started shooting a small segment with me and Christian and I were both in Morpheus suits, which is basically the computer suit which allows the computer to track your movements to create a CGI character. And we started fighting each other as two with swords and shields and that kind of stuff. It ended up being two knights fighting each other in a video game in a small segment off to the side of the film in one of the bars or casinos or whatever, which was really fun. It's really kind of interesting what we did with it. And of course I got to do the rubber suit monster that I think Garibaldi shot. And that was just a lot of fun. We did a whole bunch of little tiny sequences which ended up scattered all across everything they did with B5. There was one segment I did with where I was drinking with Adrazi at the bar, and that ended up being put into the segment where B5 is actually part of Crusade. And it's very interesting how, of course, this whole thing works. A lot of people don't understand how a lot of the industry works, but when you're dealing with a heavy CGI or stop motion animation, usually what they do is they film the actors' work first. And then they go in post-production for like 5 to 10 years and do all the stop motion and all the computer stuff, and they mix it all together in the editing room, and it works out that way. So you can do something and 10 years later find out that it's finally available, kind of thing, which is kind of neat. You know, it's really kind of fun. The most fun I had is working again with my friend Walter Koenig, and I was in 2 Star Trek movies, so I got to be good friends with the entire cast of the original cast of Star Trek. And when I was working with Walter, he was saying that it would be fun to try something, and because he loved my work with accents, and so he got me working with an accent so that I could copy his Chekhov accent. And we started shooting with Bruce Boxleitner there. Bruce, I had loved his work in Tron. He's a fantastic person to work with. And just before we started shooting, I looked at everyone and said, okay, now before we do anything, I want to rehearse a couple of lines with Bruce, because otherwise you're just going to have a blooper reel. he's just going to burst out laughing, and I know it. And they said, okay. And we'd love to see it. I mean, he doesn't think that accents will make him laugh. We'd love to see this. And so and Bruce was sitting there going, okay. And I turned right at him and I went straight into the lines. And he burst out laughing, grabbed my shoulder, and practically fell over. He was laughing so hard. And when he finally recovered from it, he said, you know, the accent's funny, but what's even funnier is how you went from your voice to the accent without even a breath. And I do that quite often when I'm really working in theater. And yeah, we just had a blast. We really did. And that was when I was creating the character of my Prince of the Centauri Republic. And using, of course, the voice of Walter Koenig as a basis for an accent. So here I am doing a Chekhov accent with this entire character, the prince. And we did this small piece, never knew if it would actually be used anywhere. It ended up being used in Babylon 5, The Lost Tales, which I just recently saw for the first time, which is really kind of fun. I mean, sometimes tracking down my stuff is really interesting because years and years go by and then I finally find something, and it's almost like finding a gold nugget hidden in a gold mine or something like that. It's really kind of neat. But you know, we had a lot of fun with that kind of thing, and I had so much fun working with that cast. And I'll never forget the first time I met Claudia. Claudia is just absolutely amazing. She's a wonderful person. And I've never had a sister, so to speak, but I've met a number of women who are like sisters. And Claudia was one of them. And when I first met her, she threw her arms around me and said, "Hello, brother. Great to see you." And it really just pulled me into the family of B5. And it really made me feel like I had come home. And she's just an amazing person. And I love all the friends I made back then. Unfortunately, I got separated from them all with all the wars and all the craziness of life. But maybe when I return to film, some of them will look me back up again. So that was some of the fun craziness of B5. Thank you.